what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So, is it reasonable to think what happens on vacation should stay on vacation? Stick around and find out. Okay, welcome back. I'm Dave, the channel's Harleys, Diners, and Rides. My initial question, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? So, what happens on vacation should stay on vacation? I think so, especially in this case. So recently, I joined two other couples, Lorilei and I, on a trip to Daytona Beach. It was supposed to be carefree, enjoyable, with lots of motorcycle riding because we were heading down to Daytona Bike Week. So a number of things happened during the trip, which I've been ribbed about over and over and over again since they was. My friend Dave and I, we were going to load our motorcycles and our wives' motorcycles in our trailers, and we were going to head out March the 3rd and head down to Daytona.
Hello everyone, I need to tell you my side of the story. Daytona 2020. Looking very much forward to it, and we met up with some wonderful friends and spent a glorious week down in Florida.
On the 3rd, probably we met up not too far from here in Keswick around 4 o'clock in the morning. By mid-afternoon, we ran into terrible rain. Apparently there was a hurricane or tornado, I think it was, coming through Nashville, did some damage there, and just the whole weather pattern was moving across from west to east across the southern U.S. We certainly hit the high winds and rain late on Tuesday and well into Wednesday when we started the next day. Now I'll back up a step. So before we left, Lori is a check your CAA, which for Canadians is the Canadian Automobile Association, which gives roadside assistance. In the US, I think it's AAA, American Auto Association. Anyway, she said check it for coverage on the trailer, which I did. And of course I could get a rider on the policy that we had, and so it provided us coverage for things like towing, tire changing, things like that. So as we're driving on the second day, this would be the 4th of March now, heading into South Carolina. The roads there are in some cases pretty rough, and as I'm driving over these potholes, I'm thinking to myself, God, I hope I don't blow a tire. I wonder what it would be like to blow a tire on a trailer. We're still fairly new to this. We've had the trailer for 2 years. 30 minutes later, bang! I hear a pop, or a loud bang, not a pop. And I look in the passenger mirror, and here I've blown a tire. And not only has the tire blown, but when it exploded, it took out the trim in front of the tire and at the tire, the plastic trim and the aluminum trim on the bottom of the trailer, and it's flapping around in the breeze. So safely I pull off to the side of the road and assess the damage, figure out Dave, he's pulled over not too far from us because we had a pair of Walkies Talkies for the drive down, and we're communicating with each other. I told him to stay there, I would come to him, and I kept the trailer on the passenger side, kept it on the grass so that I wouldn't further damage the rim. Get to him, we assess it, I make a call, pull out my cell phone, I make a call to CAA, they hook me up with the AAA, who hooked me up with a service station, and they're going to come out and change the tire, no problem. They said we should be there in about 45 minutes. Okay. So we pull off, Dave and I, we take the time, we get the spare ready, we pull off the damaged parts, stuff them in the trailer. All of this while in the pouring rain and the winds. So we were wondering where the tow truck was, so I pulled out my cell phone to make a further call just to see what the status was. And I look at the screen of my cell phone, and it's all stars, all speckly little things, right? And the phone is absolutely dead, won't work. So there we are. We're without a cell phone now, which is my link to Brad in Orange City, to Lorilei back in Keswick, to whatever, right? I'm out of cell. Well, concentrate on the tire. About another 20 minutes later, the service guy shows up, does a great job, gets me back on the road. And Dave and I are still in communications with the Walkies, and we continue along. Not too far after that, it starts to get dark, and Dave and I, we've lost about 2 to 3 hours because of the delays. We decide to pull over, and just as we're trying to communicate back and forth as to where we're going to go, stop off for get gas for the next morning, where we're going to find a hotel, don't the Walkies Talkies die. So at that point, he pulls off at the first service station. We top up, we have a game plan, and back on the road we go. The next morning, get up bright and early, sun shining, and we finish our trip into Florida. Dave heads off to Ocala, I head on to Orange City. Brad has been notified by Dave through his cell, roughly what time I'm going to show up. So I get there and get all hooked up, tell Brad what's happening, and he starts laughing and he's saying, what else could go wrong with you? And you got terrible luck, right? Normally I have good luck, right? But anyway, kind of challenging here. So anyway, we do an assessment on the trailer, and we decide, looking at the trailer, the tires were a little bit worn.
David had a flat tire, which then later he proceeded to tell me that he needed brand new tires for the entire trailer times 4.
Replace all 4 tires on the trailer, and we're good to go. All of the debris and everything's been cleared away, and we're good to go. Enjoy a nice day of riding with Brad on the Friday, the start of the bike week. And the next morning, Saturday, I'm off bright and early to pick up Lorilei, who's flying in to Orlando International Airport. Caroline, she's coming down a little bit later on another flight. That's Dave's wife. So I get up.
And I'm really hoping he shares this story, and perhaps I'm dating myself a little. But let's go back to Gilligan's and the 3-hour tour. Yes, that was my experience going and being picked up at the airport in Daytona. First of all, David had the wrong time. So instead of 9 to pick me up, he thought it was 11. Secondly, he went to the wrong airport. And because he had no phone, in fact, what ended up happening was a complete mismatch and miscommunication, and it was like the 3-hour tour. And eventually, out of 3 floors in the Orlando airport, we magically...
I'm at the wrong airport. I should be at Orlando. So looked at my GPS on the truck again, and noticed that there were 2 lines. Line number 1, Orlando Sanford. Line number 2, Orlando International Airport. And as soon as I press that button, sure enough, it shows me the street that I recognize from looking at Google Maps the night before. So I'm a little bit behind now, so off I go. I find the airport, Terminal B, find parking, run into the airport. Now I'm about 20 minutes. I'm thinking, Lori's gonna forgive me a little bit. She'll laugh at me because I went at the wrong airport, but typical me in choosing the wrong one. Usually a good planner. I usually don't make mistakes, I think. Lori will tell you. Anyway, I'm wondering, how am I going to connect with Lori? So as I'm walking through, the crowd parts, and there's Lori walking towards me. I say, God, how simple is that? So I apologized for being late, and then she said, well, you know, you're 2 hours late. And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, my flight landed at 9 o'clock. I said, oh, I thought it landed at 11 o'clock. And she says, no, that's what time my flight is to leave Orlando to go home. So not only are you late for 11 o'clock, but you're doubly late for being here for 9 o'clock to pick me up. She will one day forgive me. I think so. I'm working on it. Anyway, we drive along, and I tell her what's happened with the trailer, what happened to the cell phone, you know, even the little bit that happened with the walkie-talkies. And she says, you need a cell phone. I said, yeah, but I don't want to pay for one, right? You know, I'll go back to Canada and get this all straightened out. She says, no, we're going to go and buy you a temporary phone, which we did, $50. Came with a calling card and all of that, a US number. We've got it. We'll use it on future vacations if need be. So we get that. We get back to the campsite. Brad shook his head and started laughing at me, and he's saying, I don't know how you're going to live this one down. But anyway, I'm trying. So the plan was, now we're going to, we're headed off to the Florida Keys. And one night staying in Florida City, down into Key West, then over to Everglades City, and back into Daytona for day 4, which would get us back around Friday. So as we're heading down the highway and everything, we stopped for a break, and I said to Dave, I think I left my cell phone back in the trailer. And so he starts laughing. He says, you mean you bought a phone, programmed it, and now you've left it in the trailer for the next 4 days? I said, yeah. I said, I think I did that. And so he starts laughing. Of course, my other friend Dave's there. He's laughing. Now, the women come back, Sherry, Caroline, and Lorilei, come back and say, what are you guys laughing about? Well, of course, one of them somehow said, Dave forgot his cell phone. So now Lori says, you forgot your cell phone. And I said, well, it's not like I did it on purpose. It's back in the trailer. It's charging, so it'll be nicely charged up for when we get home. She shakes her head. They all laugh at me. We jump on the bikes and we head off. We get down into Key West, and Dave pulls over and he says, I forget the name of the hotel. He says, what is it? And I said, damn. I says, let me grab, I was going to grab the folder that has all our reservation numbers and everything in there, but I don't have it. I think it's still sitting back on the on the kitchen table in the trailer. So again, they all look at me and they start laughing. Well, how do we know where we're going? I said, well, I sent you an email, Brad. You should be able to look it up on your cell phone, get the email that I sent you. It'll have the confirmation numbers and the hotel that we're staying in. And that was done. And we're there, and that was it. But a lot more ribbing, It seems like everything that's going to happen on this trip is going to be my fault because I haven't had the best of luck so far in this trip. Anyway, we get in there. We have a great walk through Key West. I'll be honest, it was pretty quiet. Not a lot of tourism there for this time of year. And great dinner, great stay at the Cabana, or Cabana Hannah. Anyway, I'll put the link to where we stayed. Anyway, we get back on the road the next day, and lo and behold, some other things have happened. My friend Dave lost his cell phone. Of course, it was my fault. We phoned around, and somebody actually answered the phone, told us where the phone was, which was back at Margaritaville in Key West. He went and got this phone, and not only did my bad luck portray on Dave, but he also took the phone swimming in his shorts back at the hotel. So that was my fault too. How it happened, how was my fault? I'm not sure, but it's my fault. So anyway, we had a great, the rest of the trip went uneventful other than seeing some beautiful scenery, riding some beautiful highways, and seeing some unique things, again, which you'll see in future videos. So then, you know, we get back to our trailer on a Friday. Saturday morning, the governor of Florida has, in response to COVID-19 and the seriousness of this virus, has now pulled all the permits for all of the vendors at Bike Week, essentially shutting Bike Week down 2 days earlier. Instead of it ending on the Sunday night, it now basically finished on the Saturday morning, with all the vendors packing up and going home. Very unfortunate, but you know, I support definitely of what they are doing with the isolation and the removal of large crowds. You know, and at the end of the day, it's for our own health and that. But it's left Dave and I with a challenge. Here we are with 2 trailers, and we're able to get Lorilei and Caroline on their planes. Lori left on Sunday, Caroline left Tuesday morning, and they're off and heading home. They're safe. Now Dave and I have the trailers, and we're heading back to Canada. Brad and Sherry, they had packed up their trailer. They left on Monday morning, and they headed back, but we were the extra day. And I'll tell you this, because of the COVID-19, and no one was a real expert on this, but everybody had an opinion. Some were correct, some were wrong. But when there's so much information out there, how do you understand what is correct and what's not? Certainly what we did was we kept going back to the Canadian Border Agency, reading their website as to what was required to come back into Canada. Because we had heard that the borders were going to get closed, that Canadians weren't going to be allowed to cross the border, that they were going to be staying in the U.S. in quarantine. We heard all of those things, which, you know, for you know, family people wanting to get back, can be very, well, it was upsetting, right? So we get back. It takes us. We put a couple of very, very long days in to get back to Canada. Even when we pulled into Buffalo and we tanked up our trucks ready for the push back across the border and home, the young man in the service station said, "Where are you guys going?" And we said, "Well, we're heading to Canada." "Can't go. Border's shut. You got to stay here." And we said, "Well, thanks very much, but you know, we're going to push on and we're going to try get home," which we did. We got to the Canadian border, and aside from Dave, myself, and one other vehicle behind us, we were the only 3 vehicles at the border at the Peace Bridge waiting to come across roughly about midnight on the Wednesday night. We passed through the border. They had some questions about our health and things like that. We got through the border. It was great to hear them say, welcome home, welcome to Canada. Meant a lot to us. We get across the border, and what's the first thing we need to do in celebration? Well, as any Canadian would do, we found a Tim Hortons and grabbed our teas, we grabbed our cookies, and we finished the drive home. So all in all, a great vacation. I think all the ribbing should stay in Florida and not come home with me. Really, I think all of the ribbing should stay in Florida and not travel or not follow me home. Oh, one other thing. I may have left the toilet seat up with a few times, and I think Lori pointed that out to me.
Daytona 2020 was great from the first week, and the Florida Keys were certainly the highlight. But I also would be remiss if I didn't say that Bike Week was shut down in the second weekend, and our troubles are nothing compared to what the world's undergoing in terms of self-isolation and protecting their community, and countries protecting their community from the coronavirus. So stay safe out there, everyone, and take care.